you have your collar?
Yeah.
If she becomes reactive, you're just gonna give it a tap, okay? Good. And that's good right there. Right, now here, these little grumbles, we'll ignore.
Okay.
I don't want to overload the brain with too much info, but any kind of very obvious negative reaction we would correct, okay?
Okay.
So, good week?
Good week. Good week. We were trying to just being outside with her in Chicago was like, it's almost like everything went out the window, and
Oh, sure.
I had a feeling that that was going to be the case with her because of just our neighborhood's very quiet.
Yeah.
And so like there's not much going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then with just so many people around and just everything going around, it got.
Where were you walking her?
Outside here.
Oh, was it here?
Oh no, like we were walking her in our neighborhood the entire week. Morning, like lunch hour, afternoon, and then at night. So morning, I have to wake up at 5 to take her for a walk because I work at 6. And so, those are fine because there's no one out. Today we did a walk like around 7, and that one, there was a lot more people, but she was still very good. We got up to, I think 55 was the highest that I got her to this week.
Yeah, I had her at 45.
Yeah.
But 40, I had her at 30 for most of the walk, and then it was the guy trying to get into his car that freaked her out.
Yeah.
Okay. How was the distance there?
She wouldn't like growl at her. She just tried to run away. And so she followed me.
Sure.
So it was just pulling her up to get her to come back with me.
The big interaction that we had was with the fence and I think, is it three dogs? Three dogs on the other side of the fence? And she had the muzzle on with her. And so I was between her and the dogs, so it was like her, me, and then the dogs, and I tapped her 3 times. She wasn't paying attention, and then finally I bumped her up, tapped her again. She finally listened and we kept walking while that was going on. What I was really proud of her for was when there was a guy also walking his dog, and we were walking. She did try to like lunge a little at them, but not like she's doing right now. But that was like across the street.
Okay.
And she did like a grumble at them, but once I tapped her, she stayed by me and then continued the walk.
What was your number?
45.
And what was the number for the fence?
I think that was my 55.
Okay. So what you would do is, when you go by the fence, is ideally you want to repeat it. Okay. For where you were at the first week, that was perfectly fine. Now that's good. Okay. Is dogs are all about repetition. So let's say if she was being reactive back, we would keep tapping and bumping and walking back and forth until, don't worry about perfection. You're just worried about achieving self-control or impulse control, containment, where she's gonna look uncomfortable. She's like, all right, I gotta stick to mom and like forget about this. 2 to 3 more times in as passive a state as you think you'll get, and then you do your walk. So what happens is, if the dog lunges and we tap and we keep going, and they remember the lunge, and you're trying to teach, yes, you lunged, we corrected it, and you walk back several times passive. So the next time, it's not that there won't be a lunge, but you'll get there faster, and you repeat 2 or 3 more times, you go. If you keep doing that, eventually the dog will be lunging, and she'll right past it. And then when you come across another dog behind the fence, she'll probably trigger because it's out the blue, correct, but it would be much, much faster. And then next thing you know, like you'll be walking by and there'll be a random dog behind the fence and she's just unfazed. Okay? So we always correct and then repeat at least 2 to 3 times. Just, if it ends up being more difficult, one, just remember that dog does belong to someone. So I've been yelled at by people. So just a heads up there. But technically you use that to your advantage because it's like we have two people that have unresolved tension and they see each other, like they're just gonna pick up at that argument until we resolve that issue. Same thing for dogs. If the last time she's like, hey, I saw that dog and we were lunging at each other, you know, she's gonna kind of keep going there. And you're trying to teach her like, yeah, that dog was acting out behind the fence, but you had to keep your shit together and like hold it and then we left. Okay, so the last thing she remembers is she was in a passive state with that dog, that dog being a higher energy. Okay? Other questions?
No, that's great, because I was just avoiding that house from our walks. I was like going like.
Yeah, in the beginning that's fine.
And like, because I was just like, that, we
You
found.
still moving by that house just on the opposite.
We just go on the opposite side.
of the street.
And I've had it where me and her were walking and the dogs were out and she just ignored them from across, because they were across the street.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Yeah, and don't worry about getting her to walk exactly next to the fence.
Okay.
You can give space to like show her like you are taking control of the situation because you're not putting her right there.
Yeah.
So the way I explain it to people is like in the movies when you see someone like a prisoner walking down like the jail hall and you got all the guys reaching out and like yelling and screaming, right? Like how like stressful that would be. Same thing for the dog, right? Like she's walking, she's already got a fear-based type personality and then she's got this dog here, right? It would make her feel uncomfortable. So fanning out to give space is perfectly fine and acceptable to help her like figure out like, okay, you are understanding this situation, but at the same time it's expected that she does not reciprocate. Okay, so it's like growing up, I was raised like, hey, if bullies talk shit to you, you don't reciprocate, you ignore it. If it gets too bad, you report it to someone. Unless it gets so bad that you defend yourself, then you defend yourself, right? Yeah. That's how I take things here with dogs. I go, yep, that dog is talking smack, but it doesn't mean you guys talk smack back, but we'll get some space. So she's also kind of not feeling like, oh, I'm like walking right next to the fence, you know? Other questions?
No, that was it.
Good. So whenever it comes to anything like that, your best bet is avoidance, like you did. Because she doesn't, like dogs do understand avoidance behavior, but like let's say it's super obvious, like we're not obvious, but so proactive, where you're like, I'm not gonna walk down this particular block because I know the dog's there, I'm gonna go down the other block, right? She doesn't put that together. But if you see a situation like where there's a person coming up and as you cross the street, she puts that together. Okay. Okay? So if you come across a house or a situation where you're like, I don't know how to handle this, your best bet is always avoidance sooner rather than later, because what I don't want her to learn is I lunge and bark, and then you pull me away from the situation, because that's technically rewarding, right? So like here, with my movements and stuff, right, she's grumbling, I'm not giving more space, like I'm moving normally, we're correcting her. So she's learning like, okay, these tactics aren't working, right? Because if I did back off of her, that would become, that would be reinforced, okay? So good. So for this week, you're going to continue with the healing exercise. If there's any ways that you feel like you could push it, feel free to push it. What we're going to push today is the touch stuff, okay? Putting her under spatial pressure, because that's her ultimate fear. Is if me just being this close to her is unsettling, imagine like when I'm in contact. Right? So a couple things that we're probably going to see here. One is active aggression, okay? She's probably going to try to bite because she's got that muzzle on. She may nip or nick her jowl or her tongue. It's just part of the process, unfortunately. She might express her anal glands. Okay, so it smells like crap in here. That's why. She might also.
Lights, just in case.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. She might pee herself or whatever. You know, we'll come and mop it up or whatever. It's all part of the process. But I'm gonna push that hump of coming into that personal space. That should make things much more simpler because now she's over it. Right now, the threat of me is I'm still like a threat. Like I've not come closer. Last week we just showed like what we can achieve with the structure and discipline of the heel. Right. And all this is good. Because remember the last time you guys came in, like she was already like,
at 100.
So this is good here. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna double leash her. Okay. To give us a bit more control because she's probably gonna fan out and kind of swivel a lot. Yeah. So I'm gonna go get a couple of leashes. Sure. She might react as I walk out. You'll just correct her, but just a heads up, okay?
Okay, thank you. Bless you.
Yeah, I don't like this muzzle head.
I'm gonna, I'll go the other way and I'll get. What, measure her?
Alright.
I'm thinking what we're gonna do. I'm gonna put one slip over her hind quarter, so back about the waist
Okay.
area. And you're gonna noose this
Yep.
and then tighten this up.
Okay.
We're gonna have one person to her left, and then one person to her right with the other one on her neck.
Okay.
And we're gonna leave that one just loose, that leash you have there.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, her.
You wanna do the,
Okay, her back. How many? I get this over her backside. Up, up, up.
like, no.
One, two. Lucy, your leg thing.
Yeah, you can expand it too, there you go. Okay. So this is so that we can contain her.
Okay.
Because she's probably gonna, if I just have one person hold her, she's gonna keep fanning out and I
Yeah.
wanna trap her so she has no
Okay.
choice, okay? Go ahead and set your remote on the shelf right there.
Got it.
There you go. And you'll step over by this wall here.
All right.
And then one person will be to her left while the other person will be to her right.
There you go.
That's good right there.
Good.
So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna actually dip this down. I'm gonna go down to
Okay.
25, and you're just gonna get a good hold there, okay?
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And go to space a little bit to the, there you go. So we keep it right in the center. Yeah. Yeah. 25 to 32. Tap. 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 40. Good. And let me have it come this way a little bit. There you go. Yeah. There we go. This is 40. So you can see she expressed. You
Yeah.
can smell she expressed.
Oh, yeah. I know that smells very well.
So that should stop happening as we repeat this.
Okay.
Because we're getting her over the hump of the contact, which in her mind is the kind of epitome of the fear. Okay, there we go. Okay, I know. Good girl.
Cool. Look at that.
You can see that in her back there, how she's like real tight. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then go in, yes, there you go. Good. Good. So what I'm doing here is when she goes under that kind of extreme flight mode there, is don't think of the tap as a punisher, but think of it as a, how do you say, like a settle?
Yeah.
You know, like in the movies, I liken it to like when people are freaking out and then someone smacks them,
Yeah.
right? And they're like, hey, cut it out. And you're trying to just like knock some sense into them.
Right.
It's similar, but we don't have to be harsh. When we do aggression stuff, people typically think know, you're gonna come in and like be on 100. And sometimes I have to, but I started at 25 and I worked my way up, and now I'm at that 40, right? Which makes sense because for the week, your walking number has been like 45.
Yep.
And then 55 when she was like at her worst, right?
Yeah.
So what we're teaching the brain here is that she doesn't have to respond and nothing negative is gonna happen from me, okay? So the grumbling, I ignore in the beginning because this is all like habitual response.
Yeah.
Her brain literally cannot help this response, okay? Dogs do not sit there and plot. Dogs react, okay? And then go ahead and relax a little bit, like that, okay? And then keep your position. So here, when she was panicking and barking, real slow, tap, tap, tap. So what you did this first past week was teaching her how it turns on, how it turns off, disagreeing with reactive behavior and stuff. So she has a concept. So when I come in today, it's clearer for her, like, oh, I know what this is. I've felt this before. What's it communicating to me, right? So at 25, we saw like the bucking around, wasn't getting better. I go to 32, more bucking around. Then I go to 40, and then we saw a much better response, right? So here, I'm not, this allows me to make contact the way we've set her up, isolates her. So you see how she's running towards you, like, hey, she's seeking comfort because of all that fear stuff, but she has to learn how to handle it on her own.
Right.
Okay, so this is why we do this, so that, because I'm like, I know this dog, she's gonna do all this stuff, so we need to contain. Otherwise, if she keeps pivoting out and getting away from me and jumping back, it doesn't allow me to just make that contact, so I remove all those options, which puts her at her worst. Because she goes, I can't escape from this, right? She could try to even attack us if she wanted to. Nothing's gonna happen. I'm not gonna back off. And eventually she goes, okay, well, I thought Jesse meant harm, but nothing bad is happening as he's petting me. But if I flip out and buck around or anything, pressure turns on, and as soon as I settle, pressure turns off. So she's starting to figure out, like, oh, I can have this happen and not have to be this, like, feel this way. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So trainers tend to avoid the touch stuff, and it's really just a band-aid because you're just resolving the reactivity or the display of the reactivity and stuff, but nothing really fixes the problem because we never got the dog to confront it. Okay? So what I did here was I put the brain under pressure, I make contact with her, I'm there for a bit, I take the pressure off to let this happen. Okay, you see how she's like nipping her head and stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, so she's kind of like really unsure because she's thinking like the worst thing that could ever happen to me just happened.
Just happened.
Okay? So she's got to process that, but then she's learning like, okay, like, it wasn't that bad. Okay? So once I get her far enough along, so we're going to be kind of taking maybe a tangent here and there, is we're going to do obedience because we want control and we can practice discipline, but then I got to do this core component to see where can we get her.
Yeah.
Right? Once she's farther enough along, then would be, okay, now let's have, your friends or family come over that that you wouldn't have over because of her behavior, and we start to see if she's capable of opening up.
Yeah.
So I don't care about outside people because they're strangers, like people like we as people don't even talk to like random people on the street, right? But the people that will come into the home, your friends, your family, close ones or whatever, that's realistic, right? And because she would see them on a repeated basis, it's much more likely that she would open up and accept them than she would just a random person, okay? And like let's say down the line you got like a new friend and you invite them over. Probably not gonna go great the first time, but that's okay. It would just be repetition, and eventually that new person, she's like, oh, okay, I've seen you 100 times, you're cool. And then that's another person within her bubble, okay? Questions about any of this so far?
No.
Okay, so this you wouldn't worry about, like practicing obviously with anybody. I'm gonna do all the hard stuff, and then once I feel like she's at a good point, then we'll start to practice it within the home, and then like having like friends and all that stuff, okay?
Cool.
Yeah. 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 And I'm gonna have you go more upwards so that she doesn't get caught. Yeah. 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 She kept going with her paw.
Yeah.
She was trying to push it away. There we go. Bump to the 45. Tap, 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 tap. Okay. Yep. Good. And this tends to be the hardest right here.
Yeah.
Right over the head. Good. So the reason for putting her against the wall is just it limits just, again, another direction she can go.
Right.
Go. The growl that we along in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. And then the panting. So when I step back and take off pressure, it allows the brain to reset.
Okay.
And so what can happen is they can stack. So I put pressure on her in the beginning. She could be like an 8. I calm her down to a 3. I back off. She stays at 3. So when I come back in again, she could jump to 10 because she's jumping from a 3 as opposed to a 0. Right? So we keep repeating this where I put on pressure, I step away, I let the brain decompress, and then we come back in again. And every time she blows up, it's another opportunity to teach her, like, this is not what you have to do.
Yeah.
You can just like chill and relax, okay? So when people see like the aggressive responses, they tend to feel bad because like, oh, the dog's not getting better. I'm like, no, the dog is. It's just time and repetition because this is how long of a behavior being practiced, right?
Yeah.
And then we're having to go against it. Yeah. 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 Yep.
You want to switch sides? Since my arm's longer.
What's that? Oh.
Asking her if she wants to switch sides since my arm's longer.
Yeah. 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 Good. Let's go to the 50 here. Good. So like right there, because I left this leave on her for a period of time, like she was okay, and then like 2 minutes go by, and then her threshold is hit. So there's a couple of things here. One is just how long am I in her personal space before the brain goes, okay, like I gotta do something with this, because all that negative energy has to come out. So then as she explodes, she's like, okay, well I explode when Jessie comes in, I get corrected. Jessie's here for a bit, and then I blow up, I get corrected, right? But as long as I'm chill, and I'm just here, and I'm breathing, and I'm as relaxed as I can be, nothing happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why the e-collar is such an effective tool, because it's a neutral. She doesn't know it's me controlling the collar.
Yeah.
She just thinks, okay, Jessie's not changing, mom and dad aren't changing, no one's freaking out, the only one freaking out is me, right?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I know, being able to walk her with the e-collar has been just, because I have degenerative disc disease in my back, and so, like, with just walking her by my side, has been like, it's been great. I love it.
Excellent.
It was so good. It makes me so emotional just thinking about it.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. And then forward.
Come here.
Yeah. There you go. No, I've had people who like kind of become recluses because their dogs are like so reactive.
Mm-hmm.
I've had clients, and one client in particular, you can relax a little bit. One client in particular, she used to go like 20-something flights of stairs to avoid the elevator because of dogs and stuff, you know? And of course it's like, good workout, but no one wants to do that 3 times a day.
No, right.
She'd go at 3 o'clock in the morning, and literally we just did one class with e-collar, and then by she was like, Jessie, she's like, I can take the elevator now. She's like, you don't know how crazy that is. I'm like, I didn't know, you know. But This gets a bad rap just because of how they dub it, shock collar,
Right.
you know, and what our brains tend to think of, you know, when they go, you're electrocuting the dog and stuff. There's it's methodical.
Right.
You know, and then people always think, oh, like, you probably just like jack it up and like make the dog yelp and stuff. But no, like we start low, work our way up, the dog determines what's too much, what's too low. It's like right now I bump to 50, right? And incrementally it just keeps going up. So eventually I'm able to make contact with her, and you see how she's panting right here? So panting is venting stress. And when I come in, I don't remember if we did this last time where she like closed her mouth and stopped breathing for a little bit. That's loading tension. Okay, so that's communication, it's nothing good or bad. It's just her telling you that what's happening right now is making her uncomfortable. It's what she decides to do after that that matters, okay? So like right now when I repeat and I come in, let's say she closes her mouth, but then just goes straight to panting. Good, she just said, hey, this made me uncomfortable, but I know the last 2 times I got corrected, so I'm not gonna do anything this time. And she goes back to relaxation, good. Now she's learning that she doesn't have to blow up. But that silence is a cue to you that whatever's happening within that moment is making her uncomfortable. Because a lot of times when people think like, oh, my dog is like unpredictable. Well, no, dogs are not unpredictable. Dogs always give a cue. There's either a bunch of stuff that was ignored prior, or there was a moment of silence, like the owner didn't realize the change in breathing, whatever, is a sign of tension, or a side eye, like all these little things that dogs are communicating that we don't see. So whenever, like, let's say you're walking with her and she's panting, and then like somebody closes the car door and you hear silence. Back to panting again, that car door closing made her uncomfortable for that split second. But then she was just like, that doesn't pertain to me. And she let it go and she keeps going. Okay? So when you walk her, just be more mindful of things. Or like, let's say when someone, like let's say you step up to the side and someone crosses, and let's say she's fine, but then right here she quiets down. And then when they pass, she goes back to panting. Right here made her uncomfortable, right? So, because usually it's a spectrum, like this window here, and this is the hardest for the dog, right? And that gives you an idea. And as you have more people pass by, you might start to hear panting. Nothing's happening in the middle anymore. So that's showing you, oh, she's getting more comfortable with people walking past, and she's not feeling tense or as if they're a potential threat that she's got over them. And then you might one day, you get a lot of progress with that, and then one day a bicyclist comes by, and you hear it quiet down. Because it's higher energy, it's a fast moving object or whatever, or maybe it's coming towards you, you know, that also changes things. All these things are things that you can listen for to learn more about her and her triggers and her thresholds, okay?
Yeah.
Question about any of that stuff?
No, it all makes very, very much sense.
So let's go ahead and, if we can bring her over more to the middle here. There we go. Yep. And then pull her back more towards the orange. Is it all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was 2 taps on 50. I'm gonna go to 55. Now this is calm energy, by the way, with that I'm doing, right? Next thing is like I come in with bigger energy, baby talking and stuff like that. Okay, so we take it step by step.
Like the stuff that we expect our friends and family to do, baby talk at
Baby
her.
talk, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good, so she might have another little spiel here, but that was 2 taps in that 50, right? Compared to all the other ones, right? So from 25 up to 50, I bumped to 55. And I gotta go in all the spots.
Her underside seems to be a big trigger for her too.
Yeah.
And even for you guys, or?
Yeah, she doesn't like to be moved,
Yeah.
so.
Gotcha.
And she grumbles it. She never lunged at us before, but.
Sure, she just like voices her
She just
pleasure.
grumbled, yeah.
Now, there was that one time she lunged at me.
What was it?
On the bed, me moving her.
Are the feet a problem too?
Yeah, feet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Feet's a big one. I don't think she recognized it as me though.
Yeah, I think because it was a dark room,
Yeah.
I think it freaked her out. She was also sleeping. I mean, I don't.
So those 2 taps to back her off. So here, as I put pressure on the brain, and when I move out, so fear, aggression, you move in, they move back, you move back, they move in. So she's loaded with a lot of pressure there because I'm in a personal space. 2 taps at silver, which is good. I'm there for a bit. I go to take off that pressure. She finds that to be her opportunity.
Right.
So I correct those 2 taps there on 55 and back to the immediate contact. Okay? Because then if I just back off, even though I tapped her, it's still just the reward of me backing away to that lunge and not following through with like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Is again like a type of reinforcer. Okay?
She got what
So,
she wanted.
what's that?
She got what she wanted, which was you back.
Exactly, yeah. So that's why I always got to come back in. So as we go along, what will most likely happen is like next class, I'll probably do a quick review of this
Yeah.
to see what does the brain retain, okay? And it should be kind of picking up where we left off today. If we regress, it's just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, it's stuck. Better. And you can relax for a little bit. There we go. And then we cover like the second half of heel, come back class 3, press a little bit more, maybe more energy, right? And then we're just kind of building each week off of what we did the previous week to see what does she retain, okay? Questions so far? Nope.
No.
And this will make things outside easier
Okay.
because it's just pressure,
Yeah.
right? But it's not gonna be this, it would be, you know, it will help her threshold expand. So like, you know, the first day, her threshold was very minimal. And then we did the healing exercise and allowed us to kind of come in and not have her be so explosive.
Yeah.
Now we're pushing even more, so then her threshold's gonna open up so that it's not like any little thing with even the progress that you've made, would you make even more?
Yeah.
Okay? 55. And the other thing is the brain can only be angry for so long.
Yeah.
That's the other thing here. Is this all this emotional energy she's expressing here at some point becomes exhausting.
Yeah. I know after training last week, she just passed out in the back seat.
She's a 70-pound dog, you can pass it on me.
No, that is true. I thought she was in the back seat, I forgot.
No, that was on me.
That was on me.
So I'm gonna step back here. That's it. Yep. Come back again.
Oh,
Okay, put this up to the side, you're fine. Right. And then, try moving this way.
Yeah. Come on.
Oh,
There you go. Good. Good. You saw the tension as I was approaching there? Yeah. Good.
You gotta push it down and build it back up.
That was about 4 or 5 times. The feet are definitely a hard part for her.
Yeah.
yeah, but we have another dog who licks her, licks her back there, and she always negatively reacts to him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She just doesn't like dogs near her butt.
Yeah, it's because she's vulnerable there.
Yeah, it's,
Good. One step in, you can relax. So the other dog, how old?
10,
12.
12.
12?
12.
Okay. What I would do is if you see that dog coming in to interact in that rear area, call him away.
Okay.
Okay? She might be a little bit more
Yeah.
defensive because of all the pressure putting her under until she gets over that hump.
Yeah.
So here, when we tend to see these things, we stay away. We don't press boundaries, which is, if you don't know what you're doing, yes, it's just avoid.
Yeah.
But here, I have to push every little thing that would set her off.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like anger management, if you will. So anything that you might think of where you're like, yeah, that's usually a trigger and stuff, if you think of anything, just let me know, so I
Okay.
can work on it. So like I had a client's dog who, not even they could touch her tail. And she wouldn't like attack them, but she would, growl and stuff, she'd get defensive over it. And I spent like 2 to 3 classes just touching her tail. And she kept blowing up, and it took a lot to get her to finally stop. And to the point where the owner was like, are you making my dog worse? Like, what is this gonna do? I'm like, trust me, you have to press every boundary and teach the dog that aggression is not an acceptable response to
Yeah.
stress. And then fast forward a bit after they completed the programs, and she did great because they had a very social life. They used to have people come over all the time. And then one day I ran into him at a bar because we live in the same neighborhood.
Okay.
And he like called me over and he was like, hey man, he's like, I'm sorry that I cussed you out that one time. He's like, but we were at our dog at the Pilsen Festival, and some kid ran up and grabbed her tail. And she like locked up, but she didn't do anything. And the little kid like let it go and like went off to do her kid thing, whatever. And I said, yeah. Like it technically shouldn't have happened, right? Someone should have stopped the kid like, hey, no, you can't pet this dog, we gotta
Right.
blah, blah, blah. But it did happen. But that's why I did that stuff for. So it's kind of more so precautionary. Like I hope it doesn't happen, but in case it does, we should be covered. So that's so for the other guy for this week, because I'm doing so much touch and everything, and I'm pressing more of the rear stuff. If you see him going, like just call him away or whatever. and we'll just avoid that.
Yeah.
And then the next time I come in and we touch, or I touch and see how she does. If she's even uncomfortable with you doing it, potentially something I may have you do, because the more we press that and correct her, and we can even counter condition here and use food. So like if you touch her feet, she'll get grumbly, or what was it?
She doesn't get grumbly with me when I touch her feet.
No, she doesn't, I mean, she doesn't like her paws to be touched, but she mostly just pulls them away.
Yeah, she just walks away from the situation.
And
She
she'll
won't
try to use her
follow.
mouth to move you off because she doesn't have access to her paw. But she doesn't snap or anything like
No.
that. But it's like when she's laying down and comfortable, if I try to do paw touches or anything, especially at night when she's tired, that's when she gets grumbly.
She gets grumbly then.
Gotcha.
And the one time I lunged, my hand was underneath her abdomen,
Yeah.
Okay.
trying to pull her out.
Trying to move her. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna do one more with the whole touch stuff with her right now, and then I'm gonna cap it there for her.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and have you step a little bit to your right there.
Come on. Come on.
There we go. I'm at 16 now. I don't know if you saw her earlier, like kind of wagging her tail.
Yeah.
Just kind of let go, okay, like, this isn't so bad.
Yeah, that's why I was like, is that good? Okay.
Yeah. It's her relaxing a bit more.
Good, because I'm like, oh look, she's wagging her tail. And
Yeah. Now, you typically when the older sees that, like they would talk high pitch to the dog, you would actually just remain neutral.
Okay.
Okay. So what we perceive as happy is really excitement or overstimulation.
Yeah.
Okay. Overstimulation and or excitement can easily flip into aggression. So what happens is you're talking to her in a sweet tone, right? And then I come in or I move or something, all of a sudden she triggers into aggression mode because she's overstimulated. Okay. So when you see that, you can appreciate it, but we wouldn't want to feed energy into her. You just let her process it. But it was good because it's showing me her relaxed side, right? Like, okay, like I did that happened, not so bad. And then what we should start to see is her, within my presence, come to relaxation more easily.
Okay.
Okay? So like, obviously at the start, much more difficult, a lot of remoting. And as we progressed, the remoting became less and less. Yep, now she's starting. And you can come in just a little bit. There we go. There you go. Yep. So I relax. Good. So right there, you saw her, you could feel her body relaxing, right? And the brain goes under conflict because she's like, I'm relaxing around this threat, right? And I saw it right about that. I was gonna say like, it's gonna happen here. But that's what she needs to learn, is that she can be in a relaxed state in my presence. She can be a relaxed state while making contact with her. And then, so like the last thing she's gonna, there we go, a little bit of tension again. So she wants to lay down because she's tired. Is learning to be relaxed around me, she doesn't be tense. Oh, is that, so like when I move and when I talk and stuff and she grumbles, you should start to see that become less and less as well.
Okay.
Because she's understanding like I'm not a threat, but right now her brain is just so conditioned to think that I am a threat. And what we're doing is when the brain goes into that mode and I correct her, that's how she learns to self-regulate. And she's anticipating, if I kick into this mode, this happens, and if I get out of that mode, it turns off. Okay, because dogs are on or off. Dogs are like a light switch. So like, good, and quite relaxed. So, have you seen that video? It's like viral. It's a fence sliding open and closed, and the two dogs behind it, right? And when it opens, they stop, and then when it closes, they start fighting again, on or off, okay? So here, I'm teaching her that time. And you can put her to her normal leash. I'm gonna put her remote right here. And you can have a seat right here. Right, that's it. Tap it in there for her. There we go. Very good. Good. Dog are like light switch. He's like, let's go. Yep.
Just trying to get the muzzle up. Go.
And then relax. Okay, so she does it. There she goes, good. So we're on her phone. Okay. So like if a dog has a bone, if I go to reach it, right? And I pull my hand away, they go right back to between the bone like nothing happened, right? So dogs don't really hold on to things. So here, when they come in, her brain turns on, and I'm using the remote to turn their brain off, right? So what's happening is, she anticipates the hit's gonna happen, so she's gonna kick into it, but then she's gonna start to also kind of pull back, anticipating the hit. But then that's how the brain learns, oh, if I kick into this mode, this happens, and it turns off when I relax. What happens if I kick into the mode and relax immediately, nothing happens with the remote. So she goes, oh, so I can also avoid the consequence, right? So like same thing with the reactivity stuff. If she lunges and barks and you remote her, she learns, okay, if I lunge and bark at this dog, this goes off. What happens if I don't do anything? Nothing happens. And you might see where like will go think about it and immediately like jump back away from it because they're anticipating the hit's gonna happen. And that's when we lay out the pressure because we want the dog to learn like, yes, you can avoid the discipline, you can avoid the consequence. You just have to make the right decision.
Right.
And eventually they don't even think about it anymore because it's not a forced habit. Now the habit is like not to react. Okay? So your homework for this week is just to continue with the healing stuff. You can use the dog behind the fence as a controlled exercise.
Okay.
I would probably just be at 55 already, because at 55 worked the first time. I would just be there. And 55, it wasn't what the leg stuff was her worst thing today. That's why I went to 68. Otherwise, 55 most likely would have been like that perfect number for that whole exercise.
Okay.
So then, when you go to walk past that fence, you want to assume it's already going to happen. And as you're walking, just look down at her, okay? And then if you start to see her even do this, right there. You do not have to wait for the active lunge and bark or the reactive response before kicking in. The sooner you can kick in, the better. Because if the brain goes into reactivity for 5 seconds before you kick in and stop it, sometimes the dog will always do 5 seconds of reactivity.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As opposed to a split second in and at 55 kicks into, okay, well crap, I couldn't even do it for a split second. Or think about doing it for a split second.
Right.
Pressure kicked in. So the sooner you can kick in with the power, the faster she's gonna learn how to self-regulate. Because some dogs will take like the 5 seconds of reactivity and take the consequence.
Yeah.
Because for them, the action itself is rewarding enough. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, this is good. Questions?
No, I don't have any.
Good.
There,
Yeah.
oh, I do, oh, okay, so there is another area by when we go on our walk, there is a dog that they have one of those electric fences, and, cause it's a corner house, and, I have not encountered that dog yet at all. I haven't even, but should I just avoid that area for now? Or should I do the same thing I do with the fence?
There's no fence there?
There's no
Yeah,
fence.
we have an electric fence.
They have an electric fence.
So my only issue with that is that some dogs will go past the electric fence.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why I was like, oh, I do have one, because.
Yeah, I would avoid that.
Okay, great.
Just because electric fences aren't guarantees.
Right.
Like, I remember I had a client, they had a husky, and he would run full speed and then jump, and you would hear him, But he knew that if he jumped, he would just keep going.
Right.
He'd get the hit and you'd hear him yelp and then he'd hit the ground and just keep going. Because once they're past the threshold, it doesn't work anymore.
Right.
It doesn't continue to go off. It's just that it's at a distance prior to the threshold. So some dogs will want to bypass it, or some dogs will just blaze right through, take the hits, and then go across.
Okay.
So I think your best bet there is just to avoid.
Okay.
Anything that's contained where you're like, okay, this is controlled context, you can use to your advantage. Other questions?
No, that I'm glad I remembered.
So I do have one. So if we have like people coming to the door or anything like that for now, just
Are they coming in or
they're not
they?
coming? They're not. We put her in a room whenever anybody comes in to do work or anything like that.
Okay.
You know, she is freaking out the entire time because she knows someone's there.
Yeah.
But we're not. So right now we're not really concerned with doing any training along that line with her, right? So
You can still address her though.
Okay.
So what you can do is, you know, you can put her in the room, that's perfectly fine, but it doesn't mean that she can be doing nonsense, right?
Right.
So she can be in the room, she can be collared up.
Okay.
I would probably be at 45, 55. And then when she blows up, give a tap, you know, and then the rhythm I use is tap, tap, tap. Because you want to give, between each hit, you give space to allow the brain to make a decision, okay? So only time I go tap, 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 like I did that once here, is because she went on a full-on lunge, so I went tap, tap, tap to like back her off more quickly. By the way, if she's in the room and she's just barking, you just continue to tap and then bump the level until essentially she chooses to do something else.
Okay.
Okay? You can correct, or like let's say she's in the house, she's got the collar on and like, you know, UPS is walking up to drop something off, you can correct that as well. Because they're not gonna make contact with her, right? You're just teaching her like, hey, like you can't blow up at every single thing. Which for a case like this, I would recommend, just because it's 99% of the time that she's being unchecked, right?
Right.
So when it comes to wearing the collar, let's say, you know, like Amazon usually comes between like 11 and noon or something. You'd have your collar on, or maybe like between 4 to 7, when everybody's coming home from work and stuff. And that's like a lot of like the window activity. You have the collar on, and then already at that 45, 50, around 5 range to correct her. And then just remember to rotate it every 2 hours, because of the 2 probes, she can develop pressure sores, because not from the stem, but from 2 things poking in the neck for a bit of time. So 2 hours tends to be like the average. If you want to rotate it every hour, hour and a half, that's perfectly fine too. Also, when you do put the collar on, people tend, if you're right-handed or left-handed, tend to put the collar on a certain way. That can also cause pressure sores. So I recommend every time you put it on, you also just put on different sides.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, anything in the home, the activity-wise, you can correct. In terms of what should she do in response, anything but bark and lunge.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So if she like leaves the room and goes and like sulks in the corner, you just let her do it. She's got to kind of get that off her system.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
Nope.
Okay, continue with leash walking, you can correct stuff inside the home. I mean, depending on how you feel, places like Home Depot are dog friendly. At least here they are in the city there. So like when we have our boarding trains, we'll take them to Home Depot to walk around and stuff to do training blocks. And they're big and more spacious, so depending on how good you feel about her progress, you know, so exposing her to places where we typically wouldn't expose her, right?
Yeah.
And that's an extreme, of course. Like you're really like going from 0 to 10 or whatever.
Right.
But the more you start exposing her, the faster she's gonna start getting over things. Okay. And then if you go in and like it's just too difficult, then we know that that's something that we can put on the agenda to work on. It just might be too soon. Okay. With places like Home Depot, PetSmart Techco might be not too good just because it's more likely obviously you're gonna see a dog there, tighter quarters. But Home Depots are so big and spacious that they're a lot of my clients that have dogs that are like antisocial and stuff. They'll start there first. Okay.
Good.
Anything else?
No,
Okay. Good. So for her, about what I expected.
Yeah.
Nothing out of the ordinary. She responded well to that mid-range of 60s. I have another case for you when reactive with touch sensitive, way different, way more difficult to work with, okay? So today, on average, is about what I would expect, okay? So next week, we'll push a bit more of the touch. It'll be like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're gonna work on the second half of heal, and then we'll just kind of jumping back and forth between behavioral stuff and the obedience stuff, okay?
Cool.
Awesome. Good job, guys.
Thank you
Thank you so
so
much.
much for your time.
Mm-hmm.
Really appreciate it.
All right, you grab the bag.
I will grab